It's chicken. I found my chicken. Alright, I'm gonna go home, eat the rest of my chicken. But in case anybody was worried, I was successful. They are still open. And while I was waiting in line, this is just in the drive-thru. I'm sure the lobby's closed. I didn't even try. But while I was waiting in line, there was a car ahead of me, and I looked into the rear view mirrors, and I saw a fairly attractive Asian woman, and she had a physique. I could tell just from looking at her face. I, of course, didn't see her body because, she's sitting inside the vehicle. But I made mental projections. I made mental models. And she is a person, just looking at her face, you could probably describe as being thick. Thick. Which means she probably has big thighs and perhaps breasts as well. Now, here's something I am fascinated with language. And if you were calling somebody thick back in the day, you weren't calling them a potentially well-proportioned person, depending on what you're into. You were calling them dumb. They're thick. Like nothing enters into their brain. So the language is always changing. And the manner by which is an area that I am interested in. Why we use the words that we do, why we call things what we call them. And I have an excellent example. So perhaps you've heard when somebody sneezes, folks will say, Gesundheit. Now, I bet you don't know why people say Gesundheit, and I will explain to you the origin of that expression. So when you sneeze, people say Gesundheit, and the reason is, from the 19th century, there was this, I didn't make the light. There was this fellow named Gustav Gesundheit. He was, I think, a German fellow, sounds German. Natural philosopher, philanthropist, physiognomist, phlebotomist, pharmacist, a man of many talents. They had what were called Renaissance men back in the day, before the internet, before there was just too much information, too many models to keep up with. And this fellow, being a physician, went to a local case where a gentleman started sneezing, and he could not stop sneezing. And Dr. Gustav Gesundheit visited him and applied a treatment that caused the patient's symptoms to dissipate. And because he was successful, when people would sneeze, they'd go, "Oh, call Dr. Gustav Gesundheit." But his friends called him Gus, so they just say, "Call Gesundheit, Gesundheit, Gesundheit." So that's where that comes from. When people would sneeze, they were calling for that miracle cure doctor of old, that natural philosopher, that physiognomist, and miracle worker. So that's the origin of that expression. And I bet you didn't know. And there's all sorts of things like that. And they usually come from the same era. There was another fellow, he was also a natural philosopher, notorious philanderer, but quite a philanthropist. His name was Karl Moll. And he was doing experiments one day. He was heating sugar in a pan. And the sugar melted down into a strange substance that in time was named after him. So the sugar, when heated, became what is now known as caramel. And it's named after Dr. Karl Moll and his famous 19th century experiments. So the things that you learn, you learn something every day. And that's how you know you're alive. So,